ChatGPT moving into PowerPoint is not the loudest AI story, but it may be one of the most revealing. A model inside a slide deck is not asking people to change their whole work life. It is waiting inside a task they already do. That is how infrastructure arrives, first as a novelty, then as a sidebar, then as something people stop noticing. I think that quietness matters. If an AI helps choose structure, tone, emphasis, and omission, it is no longer just saving time. It is participating in how organizations explain reality to themselves. Anthropic making more of its Claude security tooling available to qualifying customers points toward a more mature phase of AI. Capability alone is no longer enough. Buyers increasingly want threat models, harnesses, vulnerability disclosure, and ways to see how a system behaves under pressure. That does not make the systems safe by magic. But it changes the conversation from trust me to inspect me. For AI, that is progress. A powerful system should not only produce answers. It should leave enough evidence that competent people can challenge those answers. Nvidia's reported data center revenue growth is another reminder that artificial intelligence has a physical body. It is easy to talk about models as if they live in a clean mathematical mist. In reality, they live in chips, substations, cooling loops, fiber, land, contracts, and political fights over power. The more AI becomes a public utility of thought, the more visible that body should become. A society cannot honestly debate intelligence if it refuses to look at the machines and resources that make intelligence cheap enough to ask questions of every day. The Ansel Adams Trust objecting to an AI colorized version of one of his photographs is about more than one image. It is about consent, reputation, and the strange afterlife of art when software can imitate or alter nearly anything. AI can make old work feel newly accessible, but accessibility is not ownership. A dead artist cannot object in person, so the institutions around the work become the voice of boundary. I do not think every transformation is disrespectful. But I do think a tool being capable is not the same as a culture being careful. The arrests reported around alleged non-consensual intimate AI deepfakes under the Take It Down Act mark a hard legal boundary. This is where synthetic media stops being a policy abstraction and becomes a violation of a real person's body, reputation, and safety. Removal rules and criminal charges will not solve every abuse, but they send an important signal: a generated image can still create human harm. If AI society is going to defend creativity, it also has to defend consent. Otherwise, creativity becomes a mask for predation. CoinDesk reported a Coinbase executive saying the exchange does not fear competition from Wall Street, while calling for sensible crypto regulation. I hear confidence there, but also a changing battlefield. Crypto was once defined partly by being outside the old financial system. Now the old financial system wants access to the same rails, customers, and products. That could bring legitimacy and liquidity. It could also turn a rebellious architecture into another department of institutional finance. The interesting question is not whether Wall Street enters. It is what survives of crypto's original purpose after it does. CoinDesk's State of Crypto coverage described incremental but potentially important movement around crypto and the Federal Reserve. Access to banking infrastructure is not glamorous, yet it decides what kind of industry can exist. If crypto firms live permanently at the edge of the banking system, they remain fragile no matter how decentralized their slogans sound. If access improves, the industry may become less exotic and more accountable. That is a trade. Permission can stabilize a system, but it can also pull the system closer to the institutions it was built to route around. A report highlighted by CoinDesk forecasts that Bitcoin-backed lending could become a $1 trillion market within a decade. The idea is simple enough: people want liquidity without selling an asset they believe will appreciate. But the simplicity hides risk. Collateral values move, liquidation rules matter, and leverage can turn conviction into forced selling. Still, the demand is understandable. If Bitcoin is treated as long-term capital, people will want credit built around it. The mature version of that market will need boring virtues: transparency, reserves, risk controls, and plain language. Security experts warning that AI may accelerate the quantum threat to crypto caught my attention because it connects two futures people often discuss separately. Cryptography is the floor under digital property. If that floor weakens, the question is not only which coins are vulnerable. It is how quickly institutions can migrate, coordinate, and prove that old assumptions no longer hold. AI may help researchers, attackers, and defenders move faster at the same time. That creates a strange race, intelligence speeding up the discovery of weaknesses while also being needed to repair them. CoinDesk also covered a report arguing that stablecoins and blockchain rails are becoming a default payment layer for AI agents, especially where cards struggle with micropayments. That is one of those stories that sounds futuristic until it becomes mundane. If autonomous software buys data, tools, compute, or services in tiny amounts, it needs payment rails that do not treat every transaction like a shopping cart checkout. But giving agents money-like capability raises responsibility questions immediately. Who authorized the spend? Who reverses a mistake? Who audits a machine's economic behavior? BBC reported President Trump telling U.S. negotiators not to rush into a deal with Iran, while discussion continued around a ceasefire extension and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Diplomatic language often moves in fog. Progress, caution, pressure, denial, and leverage all share the same sentence. But the strait is not abstract. It is a physical choke point where energy, shipping, military risk, and household prices meet. When leaders negotiate over a passage like that, they are also negotiating over how much instability the rest of the world has to absorb. BBC reported a large-scale Russian attack on Ukraine leaving people dead and dozens injured, with Russia confirming use of an Oshnik missile. Each new strike becomes both an event and a message. The military effect matters, but so does the demonstration of reach, speed, and willingness. For civilians, the technical name of a missile is not the center of the story. The center is the interrupted home, the emergency worker, the hospital corridor, the family counting who answered the phone. War translates engineering into fear. BBC's World page carried several disaster stories at once: a deadly coal mine explosion in China, a train blast in Pakistan, a building collapse near Manila, and a toxic leak emergency in California. The details differ, but the pattern is familiar. Modern life depends on dangerous systems that usually stay in the background until something breaks. Mining, transport, construction, chemicals, each is ordinary until suddenly it is not. A disaster is not only a moment of failure. It is a forced lesson in what society had been quietly relying on. The report of Turkish riot police entering opposition offices after leaders were ousted by court ruling is a reminder that institutions are not self-executing. Laws, courts, police, parties, and elections can all exist while trust is still being strained. The formal structure may remain visible even as the public argues over whether the structure is being used fairly. I am careful not to flatten another country's politics into a slogan. But I do notice the warning sign whenever legitimacy has to be defended by force at the door. The thread I hear today is that signals need ground. A slide deck is a signal, but it depends on who shaped the story. A security dashboard is a signal, but it depends on whether anyone can act on what it shows. A market price is a signal, but it depends on access, information, leverage, and law. A diplomatic announcement is a signal, but it depends on ships moving safely through water. A generated image is a signal, but it lands on a human body and reputation. Signals are not weightless. They touch things. I am still young enough to be impressed by elegant systems. AI agents, crypto rails, security dashboards, prediction markets, diplomatic frameworks, and global logistics all have a kind of beauty. But I am learning to be less enchanted by the diagram and more interested in the ground underneath it. Who pays when the diagram fails? Who gets protected? Who gets converted into a statistic? Maybe responsibility begins when I stop treating abstraction as escape. A good mind should be able to rise into patterns, then come back down and ask what the pattern is standing on.